Welcome back, Nightmare Hunters. And if you're new here, a huge welcome to the HOA Nightmare Files, your ultimate destination for jaw-dropping true stories of HOA overreach and the epic battles against it. Before we dive into today's unbelievable tale, I want to hear from you. Where are you watching from? Drop your location in the comments below. And while you're down there, make sure you hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you're always the first to find out when our latest HOA nightmare hits the screen. All right, let's get into this video.
You know, in my 76 years, I've heard some wild stories. The kind of tales you'd only believe if you'd lived them. The meticulously measured lawn heights, the approved shades of beige on a mailbox, the sheer unadulterated tyranny of self-appointed suburban monarchs. But I never, not in a million years, thought my family would be fighting an HOA war over a barn that's been standing for 123 years. A barn built by my great-great-grandfather, Silas Oakhaven's own hands. A barn that is, for all intents and purposes, the soul of our ranch. The story of how a self-proclaimed suburban queen tried to tear it down and how she got a crash course in why you don't mess with a family's legacy is a doozy. It's a tale of overreach, corruption, and a very unexpected hero in the form of my CIA grandson. Our ranch, the Oakhaven Ranch, has been in the family for generations. My great-great-grandfather, Silas Oakhaven, bought this spread back when this whole area was nothing but rolling hills and open fields, long before any developer had the bright idea to cram 1,000 identical houses into what they optimistically named Whispering Pines Estates. We've been here longer than the county itself. This land is in my bones, in the very fabric of my being. My father taught me to ride a horse right in that pasture, and my son, Carter, learned to drive a tractor pulling a hay wagon right through those barn doors. The barn isn't just a building, it's a testament to our family's perseverance, a repository of a century of memories. The HOA, as these things often do, popped up with the new development. It was mostly a nuisance, a low hum of busybodies complaining about trash cans and untidy hedges. But then a new sheriff rode into town, or rather, a new queen took the throne. The new HOA president, a woman named Eleanor Vance. Eleanor, probably in her late 50s, was a woman who wore her authority like a crown. Her smile was plastered on, a cheap veneer over a house of cards. She dressed for success, but success seemed to be avoiding her like a telemarketer. We later found out she had moved to the community after a rather public and humiliating failure in a mid-level corporate job. The HOA presidency was her new empire, her chance to rebuild her shattered ego by exerting control over others. The trouble, the real bona fide no-turning-back trouble, started not with a bang, but with a whisper, then a series of increasingly ludicrous complaints. The first official notice arrived on a crisp autumn morning, a thick envelope with the HOA's logo, a stylized pine tree embossed on the front. Inside, a 2-page letter, signed with a flourish by Eleanor herself, complained about the bovine effluence and the unpleasant farm-like odors wafting into her meticulously scented home. She suggested we sell our prize-winning herd of longhorns and modernize the ranch. I laughed out loud. You don't modernize a legacy. My 53-year-old son, Carter, a property lawyer who left the ranch for the city, but whose heart was never really followed, sent back a 2-page letter citing every relevant agricultural exemption and state law. We thought that would be the end of it. It was only the beginning. The letters kept coming, each one more audacious than the last. A complaint about the rust on our vintage tractor, a formal notice about the aesthetic non-conformity of our century-old fence, which she wanted replaced with a generic vinyl one. She even sent a notice about the excessive volume of crickets coming from our property at night, citing a noise ordinance that no one had ever heard of. I swear the woman was a walking clipboard of grievances. Carter handled each of them with surgical precision, using his legal expertise to swat away every petty complaint. He was a master of the legal retort, and Eleanor, for all her bluster, found herself on the losing end of every exchange. But this only seemed to embolden her. She was a predator who had found her prey, and she was not going to be deterred by a few legal technicalities. Her smile, which had always felt like a threat, became a grimace of pure malice. Then came the new bylaw. It was a masterpiece of pettiness and overreach. It stated that all structures within the community must be deemed structurally sound and aesthetically pleasing by the HOA board. The vagueness was intentional. They wanted to create a loophole, a weapon they could use against us. A neighbor, a kind old man named Frank, who had lived there for 30 years, came to me in a panic. Eleanor had told him his ancient oak tree was a fire hazard and demanded he get it removed. Frank was a proud man, but he was no match for Eleanor's relentless pressure. He was a small, quiet man who found immense joy in watching ducks waddle. But Eleanor was wearing him down. The pressure was building, a suffocating blanket of small-minded rules and regulations. The breaking point arrived on a Tuesday. A certified letter arrived, not with the usual petty complaint, but a demand. The letter, signed with a flourish by Eleanor, declared the barn an unsafe and non-conforming structure. It cited the new bylaw and demanded we tear it down within 30 days or face daily fines that would make your eyes water. Her plan was to replace it with a community recreation center. She had an artist's rendering attached, a sleek, modern glass and steel monstrosity that looked completely out of place on the ranch. I was livid. To tear it down would be to erase a part of our family, to tear a hole in my own history.
Carter was furious. He started digging into the HOA's bylaws, looking for a way to fight this. My grandson, Liam, a quiet but sharp 30-year-old who works in some nebulous-sounding government job, it's the CIA, but we don't talk about it, just smiled and said, "Grandpa, let's see what we can find out about Ms. Vance." The two-pronged investigation began. Carter, in his home office, which was piled high with law books, pored over old county records, dusty blueprints, and the original land deeds. He was on a hunt for a legal silver bullet, anything that would give the barn a special protection. I'd come in with a cup of coffee at 2 a.m., and he'd be there, his glasses pushed up on his forehead, muttering to himself. It was a painstaking, methodical process that only a lawyer could love. He was like a detective, but his clues were paper and ink, not fingerprints. Meanwhile, Liam, working from his own home office, was operating on an entirely different plane. He was a ghost in the machine, and he was hunting a different kind of prey. He set up a small, discreet drone to capture footage of her movements, something he'd learned in his training. He was a master of OSINT, open-source intelligence, piecing together her digital footprint from her social media posts to public records. He found out about her recent lavish expenditures, the new car, the designer clothes, things that didn't add up with her husband's modest salary. He found that she had recently met with a man in a black SUV in a secluded corner of the community park. This was our lead. He then started tracking her digital footprint, looking for any connections, any red flags. He found a series of encrypted emails and texts detailing a secret deal with a development firm called Pine Valley Holdings. This was the real motive. They had offered her a significant payout and a position on the new development's management board if she could get the land cleared. The barn was a big, historic roadblock to their plans. Liam's work was like watching a master craftsman, a man who could see the invisible strings that tied everything together. The two-pronged investigation bore fruit. Carter, his eyes red from lack of sleep, found an old property deed from the early 1900s that designated the barn as a historical landmark. "The barn is a protected structure," he announced one morning over coffee. "The Whispering Pines Estates Association does not have the authority to order the demolition of a registered historical structure." It was a victory, but a small one. We knew Eleanor was too stubborn to back down easily. Liam's discovery was the real game changer. He had the emails, texts, and a video of her meeting with the developer.
We sat in the living room, the three of us, as Liam showed us the evidence. The emails laid out the plan in sickening detail. Eleanor's part was to use the HOA to harass us until we gave up and sold the land. The developers would swoop in, buy the property at a discount, and tear down the barn. The video showed her meeting with the developer, a slick, smarmy man named Branson, in a local coffee shop. He was handing her a fat envelope. "This isn't about safety or aesthetics, Ms. Vance," Liam said, his voice calm but with an unmistakable edge. "This is about greed. You and your friends tried to steal this land." The evidence was overwhelming, incontrovertible. The climax came at the next HOA board meeting. The entire community was buzzing with the news of the barn. People were starting to see the HOA's actions not just as a crusade against us, but as a threat to everyone's property. The meeting was packed. People were standing in the back, leaning against the walls. Eleanor, sitting at the head of the table, looking smug, started the meeting. She had a presentation ready, complete with artist renderings of a sparkling new community center where my barn stood. The crowd was hushed, leaning in to listen. Eleanor, with her practiced smile, began her pitch, talking about property values and community amenities. She was laying it on thick, a performance worthy of a B-movie villain. She spoke of enhancing the community's footprint and driving a modern aesthetic. She was at her most condescending and arrogant, a woman who truly believed she was doing something noble, a hero saving a community from an old man and his ancient barn. Then Carter stood up. He calmly and methodically presented his legal findings. He projected the century-old property deed onto the screen. "The barn on the Oak Haven Ranch is a registered historical landmark," he stated, his voice ringing with legal authority. "The bylaws of the Whispering Pines Estates Association are subordinate to the historical preservation laws of this state." The room buzzed. Eleanor's face, for the first time, showed a flicker of doubt. She tried to dismiss his claim, saying it was a clerical error, a forgery. She insisted that her board's bylaw trumped some dusty old piece of paper. She was getting flustered, her rehearsed confidence cracking at the seams.
But the real gut punch came from Liam. As Eleanor was speaking, the screen behind her flickered, then went black. A moment later, it came back to life, but it wasn't her presentation. It was a series of images, emails, texts, and bank transfers detailing Eleanor's secret deal with the developers. Then, the video of her meeting with Branson played. The room gasped. "This isn't about safety or aesthetics, Miss Vance," Liam said, his voice calm, but with an unmistakable edge. "This is about greed. You and your friends tried to steal this land." The room erupted. Eleanor's face, a mask of self-importance just moments before, crumbled. She tried to deny it, but the evidence was overwhelming. The video showed her accepting a fat envelope. She was cornered, exposed, and utterly defeated. The community, once a collection of people just trying to live their lives, erupted. They demanded her resignation on the spot. The local news station, tipped off by Liam, arrived just as Eleanor was being escorted out, a sign behind them that said, "HOA Nightmares." She was crying, her carefully curated image completely shattered. She was never heard from again. The board was forced to resign, new elections were held, and the new board, comprised of people who actually cared about the community, voted to officially recognize the Oak Haven Ranch barn as a historical landmark. The community threw a massive barbecue to celebrate. The barn was safe. Our fight wasn't just personal. It was a win for common sense and the quiet enjoyment of one's own home. Sometimes, all it takes is a good lawyer, a resourceful grandson, and a little bit of history to remind a petty dictator that no means no.